welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful April the 10th, 2020. Ground of the Deportes. Big C is doing some chores down south, taking care of some things that he needs to take care of. And we wish everybody a very happy Easter, happy Friday, and may everyone have a great Easter Sunday coming up over the weekend. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You can hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You know, so many things we talk about, Big C being 3,000 miles away, and everybody has, obviously, most people pull their heads out of the sand about what's going on with the pandemic. And I pray that, just like we talk about religious moments in sports and people pray before games, and, you know, for whatever people do and use prayer for, you know, this is a great moment for that as well. I want to make sure that we also give out our Veterans Crisis Hotline. It can help a lot of people now as we all come upon the pause and we all stay home and figure out as much as possible if we can stay inside. I know a lot of people got to get out there and do whatever they have to do. But the Veterans Crisis Hotline, that can be used by so many people now, they are experienced at helping veterans and their loved ones in dealing with crisis. And you can give out that number, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and get some help. And I love giving that number up because a lot of people can use that. And it really does give you a chance to realize that we're all in this together. Everybody needs somebody to lean on. And if you just reach out, there are times when people, when they're going through challenges, they won't tell people that are close to them or people that love them because they don't want to worry other people. But that crisis hotline, you can just call it, and it's anonymous, 800-273-8255, or text 838-255, or if you're online, go to veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. I know even Vice President Mike Pence talked about that, where he and POTUS were realizing that people are going through some depression in this country, and people are going through whatever it takes to get, you know, feel better and feed our families and do a lot of things. And I know that hotline can help a lot of people. Also want to mention, without sounding naive, looking at everything that's happening with shutdown and shelter in place, with a lot of people, a lot of the governors are telling people stay inside and wait until the curve swings and or at least lowers. And that's a scientific thought and scientific speak. So we got to listen to our science and trust our medical doctors as much as we can. But launching a real estate TV show in the spring of 2020, the goal is to recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV. McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, and you can do it with TV too. And I know people want to refinance their homes. They can do that as well. So that's all possible. We'll be launching that very soon. I know POTUS is talking about trying to open up the economy as soon as possible. And I know people have to get back to work. But keep in mind, the first responders really want to say thoughts and prayers are with them. But more than thoughts and prayers, I hope they can really get a part of this $6 trillion stimulus package. Even the first two, I think the first phase is $2 trillion. People are still trying to get that. Our first responders, That's the fire department. That's the EMTs. When you call 911, they show up and help people. Of course, our doctors and our nurses at hospitals, they're on the front line trying to help people when people are going through crisis. They can't stay home. And if you have the chance to go to the grocery store, somebody's stocking the shelves. Even though there was I believe a meat plant in Colorado that had about 300 workers that were affected by coronavirus. And I know everybody has to stay as much as possible, keep our heads above the sand, and hopefully through Easter, we can all have a little bit of introspection and praying about things that we need to happen. So I wanted to make sure I did my part with that. Major League Baseball players. There's some Major League Baseball players that have signed on for a show video game tournament, and maybe that'll take some people's mind off of things too. And there's a baseball slugger by the name of Mark Reynolds. He's going to step down after 13 years of doing his thing in the world of Major League Baseball. That's a lot of time to be playing anything, 13 years in the world of baseball. And so we wish him nothing but the best. NFL football news, some reports about the great Drew Brees is thinking about going into TV after his football playing days are over with the New Orleans Saints. And I believe he's going to work with NBC Sports. Just keep in mind, I mean, you can do anything you want to do in this country if you're given the opportunity to. I wish him nothing but the best. There's a lot of people that have gone into the broadcast booth after their playing days were over. The Dallas Cowboys, they signed cornerback Savion Smith, a former XFL player. So think about a league that went out of business, or you can say it's on hiatus, but it's out of business right now. And people are trying to figure out what to do. And I know that sports has its own place and time. We've had over the last week the Atlanta Falcons. They have a new design to their uniforms, all black. It's a good-looking look, but it looks more like college football. Just my opinion. Everybody has their own thoughts. We would have been dealing with the Masters making the cut going into the weekend for Easter, but maybe it wasn't planned to have us sit up and watch golf on Easter Sunday, as a lot of us probably would have been doing. But there's still a lot of things that I'd like to bring to that conversation with the world of golf. I want to also make sure that I touch on something that I heard first from Surgeon General Jerome Adams, and it's about how African Americans have been hit harder by the coronavirus pandemic than a lot of our other brethren, even though it affects everybody. So I just want people to know it's important, and there have been some things going on too in our society that people have actually gotten a chance to talk about it and come together and talk about a solution. I remember there was a young, by Disney, we're all in this together. I remember taking my kids to Disneyland and they were playing that, and I can't remember the name of the actresses. Maybe I should know. I think Vanessa Hudgens, but I might be wrong about that. But I know everybody has to realize we're all in this together. But Big C, I know you're dealing with some things too. We'll be back in the saddle soon. But we've been talking about speaking things out loud about coronavirus and how to find a solution, how nutrition plays a factor, how healthcare plays a factor, how social distancing plays a factor. We were talking about the pastor, and I think I was saying I want 1 million pastors to pray for God's providence and solving this. And some people don't believe in prayer, but that's fine, not asking them. But for the pastors that do, there was a pastor by the name of Warren Adams who was on the CNN. He's mentioned that he's trained over 1 million pastors in the faith, in understanding how we can do things in a spiritual way that can make us see things easier. And he said something that was very poignant to me. And people can say, well, why does God allow things to happen? Well, I don't know the answer to that either. We all go through something. Everybody goes through something. Some people have health problems. Others have financial problems. Some have relationship problems. And there are people that go through things, but it's how you come out of it. I mean, you got to know who's on your team. People come and go. They come in your life, they leave your life, and that's okay. That's not their destiny to stay there. We all have a choice to do what works for us. You got to know who's on your team, though. You got to know who you can go to when you have need. You got to know who you can go to when you need prayer. And what I think about what Pastor Warren Adams talked about, he was also on the segment right after Magic Johnson was on a CNN segment. And again, everybody has a way of dealing with things, but I really appreciate the fact that we can all talk about what's important and what we need to do to get better through the storm. And I think by hearing other wise people talk, man, it takes the pressure off you trying to be the one to carry the tune. So I love the fact that Pastor Warren Adams mentioned that during Hurricane Katrina, we think about sports all the time and how it was a sports stadium, the New Orleans Superdome, that held, I think it's called Mercedes-Benz Dome now. It held a lot of people who were exiled from their homes because of the flood and because of whatever reason. And so a sporting stadium was actually used to help people get back on their feet. But Pastor Adams talked about helping, I think he said 400 pastors pay their bills. Maybe he said 40, but I thought I heard 400. It was either 40 or 400. So that's a lot of human decency to be able to step in and do that. And that was down in Louisiana when that happened. Also, we were talking about Surgeon General Jerome Adams, how we want to hear more from him. And I thought President gave a lot of praise to him today and some of the things that he was doing, and just giving out the PSAs and telling people to go to coronavirus.gov. You can't make people listen. All we can do is share that information. And I know I appreciate a lot of our sports brethren. I mean, not many of them are doing anything outside of sports, and that's okay too. That's their choice. But all of those people have grandparents or mothers and fathers that may be affected by the lack of information. And if we don't share that information, sometimes they just may not get that information. So that's what I love about doing Big C Sports. We can do that and share that information. And so I appreciate Surgeon General Jerome Adams doing his part. You can't make people listen, but they can't say they didn't hear it. And so that's important to me, as we all want to know, who won the game and how's the game going to be played. When are we going to get back to playing sports? And a lot of people want that. And I know I want it too. We all do. But there was a program last night that I implore everyone, take a look at it if you get a chance to. It's on YouTube. It's called Revolt. And it had Van Jones. It had Sean Puffy Combs, P. Diddy. It's a great program. Had a lot of African Americans on there talking about it. Dr. Jess, Angela Rye, Kamala Harris, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, many other African Americans, on how the coronavirus may be something that we just, because of lack of knowledge, haven't been protecting ourselves the way we should have. And there are things that we can do. Number one, to be healthier, we got to eat healthier. We got to shelter in place. I know a lot of times it seems like common knowledge. It's just basic to know that. But we know since the Kerner Commission was written back in about 50 years ago, there's some barriers there that put people at a disadvantage. But at the same time, I would implore everybody, if you can, you got dirt around you someplace, even if you got to bring in some potting soil, and grow some fruits and vegetables in your environment. If you have a backyard, or if you don't have a backyard, you can still get dirt and put it in a trough or in a bucket and grow some onions, grow some garlic, grow some collard greens, whatever it is. That's important that we learn to eat foods that are laced with minerals. That keeps us healthy. Every athlete, and I think Big C, you could attest to this too, a lot of athletes, especially football players, they have access to all the food that they need. The healthier food to keep them bigger, stronger, and faster, that has nutrients. Our bodies, we need shelter in place. We need to consume foods that have nutrients. And we need, if we can, drink alkaline water. Cancer cannot exist in an alkaline state. And I don't know if that affects much more of the results in having a positive outcome when it comes to coronavirus. But I do know a lot of athletes, when they train, they want to get the alkaline water in their body, and they want to eat the nutritious foods. One of the things that I thought that Magic Johnson talked about last night, and I think it can help a lot of people, is when he talked about the pandemic that he had. He dealt with the AIDS virus also, and there's times when he talked about it, I think about 29 years ago, there were not that many ways to cure it or to fight it or to suppress it. Now people can live with that. They have medication now that's treated like high blood pressure, but you got to have the health insurance to get it. You got to have proper health care. And they were just saying, listening to some of these programs, it's really a great revolt. That program on YouTube by Van Jones and Sean, P. Diddy Combs. Again, a lot of medical doctors on there too. Some people in the entertainment industry. And the message they were giving out, you can find that message is coterminous with what our Surgeon General Jerome Adams talked about. Shelter in place, even in the Passover. people were shelter in place to avoid getting whatever plague was out there. And we know this too will pass. And hopefully there's going to be some breakthrough with some science, just like people fought HIV. And when you take your medications, you're going to get through it. There are people who have high blood pressure. When you take your medication, you're going to get through it. People with diabetes, if you take your medication, you're going to get through it. And I'm hoping that coronavirus will be dealt with in the same way. So the program Revolt is about 2 hours. It was very, very gripping. And as people, at least for me, what Big C Sports wants to do, I love the sports business too. But my heart was just, I'm crestfallen also at the same time, because I learned last night that there's an island in New York City where people are being, this mass graves being constructed or dug out in New York City. They have more cases, and they're digging out land to bury people. I mean, it's macabre, but it's real. As we still have people saying, I can't wait until we get the game back on, man. Someone got to give me the game. Well, this is important that I want to make sure that I do my PSA to help all people, no matter what color you are, but it's predominantly people who look like me, because they go home to their parents and grandparents, and you don't want to affect people. New York State confirmed caseloads of COVID-19 jumped by 10,000 Thursday to 159,937. It placed ahead of Spain, which had 153,000 cases, and Italy, 143,000 cases. And then China, where the virus emerged last year, has reported some 82,000 cases. The United States as a whole, I know we want to see the game. I know we want to know when will baseball start or will basketball resume. But the United States as a whole recorded 462,000 cases, nearly 16,500 fatalities, and I believe it's up to 18,000 from what I was hearing. I mean, you hear different stories from different sources, and globally there's about 1.6 million cases and about 95,000 fatalities, and I think that's going up to 100,000. Again, depends on who gets the information. I got some of my information from BBC News, and everybody has their own thoughts. I mean, I would just say stay informed. I like sharing that information as much as possible, in spite of people wanting to see a football or a basketball or baseball game. So when we talk about when I was told growing up, if you have a problem, tell me the solution. And a lot of athletes understand this too. There was so much talk in basketball when Kevin Durant, he tore his Achilles. In the basketball game, the Warriors were playing the defending world champion Toronto Raptors, but he had pulled it prior to that in a basketball game in the Coliseum. I think they were playing the Clippers, and people were saying that it was a strained hamstring or ankle, whatever it was. It wasn't an Achilles, so maybe they tried to mask that. And when he finally pulled, we know he had to have surgery, and he was able to hopefully recover. There's not going to be the chance of him to play basketball this year, but maybe next year if it resumes, then he'll probably be able to do that. But he had access to great medicine, great health care, great doctors, and all the good nutrition your body needs, and that was where the doctors came in. And so he had the chance to do that, and not everybody has access to that. So how do we get our information if we don't? If we don't have access to that, then how do we actually keep our community safe? And I know that everybody has their own thoughts on that, but when I hear that it hits African Americans, to me, I wanted to take some extra time on this Good Friday to talk about how we can get, God's help, number one, and also the help of science to make sure that we're on top of this pandemic as much as humanly possible. I wanted to do my part, and so I really implore people, take a look at that program on YouTube. It's called Revolt by Van Jones and Sean P. Diddy Combs. There's another thing that I was saying, Big C, when you and I talk about things, oftentimes it will come up in our society. Well, the NFL has a commercial now. It says, watch the full PSA at NFL.com/COVID-19 relief. Big C and I have been talking about the coronavirus pandemic and staying safe now since early in March, even late February, but then because we were paying attention to some news coming out of China. But then early in March, we started talking about it. Now the NFL is doing a PSA. It may have taken some time, but that shows about being on the right side of what history will judge us, and I appreciate that. And as we talk about conscientious athletes and teams and coaches and players, sometimes, as I heard on the program Revolt, there were some entertainers that were saying, I don't watch the news, but they'll watch Sports Center, or they'll watch sporting programs, or they'll listen to sports podcasts. So I feel, at least in my heart, in my spirit, I want to be an avenue for people to say, you know what, let me see what's going on with Big C Sports Podcast. They can Google it, they can ask Alexa, play it, whatever it is. But when they hear anything that I say, I want history to show, when I'm an old man and 100 years old, I want history to show that when God gave me a platform, and when the floods came, and when the winds blew, that I was not a sycophant. I was not intellectually vapid, and I know some people say shut up and dribble, but that will never be me as long as God gives me breath. So when I hear guys like Tony Gonzalez, former football player and now, media commentator, Michael Strahan, these guys are Hall of Famers, but also have work in television. Tom Brady, finally hearing him coming out saying some things too that I think are important. I think all athletes can. J.J. Watt, we know he's done a lot to raise money down in Houston when the floods came. These are athletes that did that. The great Jerry Rice scores more touchdowns in the history of the NFL than anybody. The best wide receiver in the history of the universe when it comes to getting the ball into the end zone. The great Jerry Rice, he's also part of that PSA. Deion Sanders, prime time, part of it. Derek Carr, quarterback for the now Las Vegas Raiders. Well, they haven't kicked off from Las Vegas. I'm still going to call him an Oakland Raider. But he was part of that. Sean Payton, the coach for the New Orleans Saints, and many others. They just share that message on coronavirus.gov. And so when people get together and we ask for a solution and how we can all do better, and when I hear athletes that are saying what they can do and what we can all do to get better, that's part of it. And if we can just think about that, that to me is worth sharing. The NFL family, they donate more than $35 million for COVID-19 relief. That's the National Football League. They announced that in collaboration with the National Football League Players Association. And to me, that's so important, Big C, because oftentimes we look for our sports figures to say things that they may not hear on news. That's important. Now, for people that say, oh, you don't mix sports with politics, well, all of these Hall of Fame athletes from the NFL are mixing sports and politics. Who's been doing that for 5 years, Big C? Big C Sports has. Big C Sports has. If the antithesis were true, I'd be embarrassed. If I were to say, as a person with a sports show that also focuses on being hopefully nutritional, if that makes any sense to you, if we didn't do it first, then I would say that I'm not saying about who's first. I'm just saying we were doing things that I felt was right. Just like the show today. Everybody has their own platform. If you want to watch a program to watch, old replays of the Masters, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. No one can tell anyone how to grieve. No one can tell anyone, who to love and how to feel. No one can tell you that. Everybody has their own opinion. No one can tell you what your opinion should be. That has to come from your own information. That's ethereal. That's ontological, based on your experiences. That's where it comes from. But I'm proud of the NFL for this, because sometimes I know they want to get the games played, and they can't wait to get back to the stadiums because it's a $14 billion industry right now, depending on what source you hear. But where they can come in line is doing what Big C Sports has been talking about for 5 years, and I mean that, because you don't do this without getting ridiculed. There's always going to be the naysayers that say, man, shut up. Just talk about the score. That's what I want to hear. And I say to those dumb guys, then please don't tune in. Just keep your head in the sand and listen to guys that don't talk about anything other than who won a game. But Big C, as we always talk about, Google what we say, and history will judge us by if we did the right thing or not. The NFL making a PSA on COVID-19. Big C Sports been doing that since almost the beginning of the year. Started back in Black History Month. And so the NFL has a lot more clout than we have. I wish I had $14 billion. Everybody wishes they had whatever they can get their minds and their hands on. But to have the National Football League that employs about 70% African American men, and if science is saying that our communities are more affected by that, then who got traded to a team, then who scored a touchdown, then who hit a home run, then I think that's so important because I want to make sure that we do that. When black men score a touchdown and they get the microphone in their face after the game, tell me your thoughts on the game and what did you guys see in the fourth quarter that allowed you to come back and win. And a lot of people, first of all, they say, I want to thank my mom. I want to thank my whoever. They want to thank their mothers. Some of them want to thank their fathers, but most of them want to thank their mothers. And they want to say hi to their grandparents. I'm talking about black men that do that. So if you're a black athlete or even a sports guy, I know sometimes Massa won't let you say what he won't let you say. Massa won't let you do it, so you got to do what Massa says and just read scores. But I don't have a Massa other than God. So now when the NFL owners and players, again, this is for you knuckleheads that said, quit talking sports and politics. I just want to hear a score. Tell that to the NFL Hall of Famers now. Tell that to the National Football League now. Because they've capitulated. You know why? Because they pull their heads out of the sand. And if they can do something to keep the people they love safe, I believe that's worth the reward. More so than telling them who won a game or how big and strong somebody is. So I love that. I love that we've been doing it first, and none in the broadcast universe can say that we haven't done that. That's important to me, Big C. So more than $35 million has been donated to this date, including $3.4 million from the NFL Foundation as part of the COVID-19 relief efforts. The 10 organizations receiving donations are the American Red Cross, the Bob Woodruff Foundation, Boys and Girls Club of America, the CDC Foundation. I mean, there's a lot of foundations. Meals on Wheels of America, Salvation Army, Team Rubicon, United Way, Wounded Warrior Project organizations. There's so much more. They're saying if you want to donate, go on to NFL.com/COVID-19 relief. Big C Sports not asking for a donation, only sponsorships. But people can do what they got to do. There's nothing wrong with that. I love the fact that our sports brethren are no longer what Laura Ingraham said, shut up and dribble. She doesn't shut up and dribble. She's trying to get doctors on her program too. She's always bringing on a doctor to talk about something other than shut up and dribble with her politics. That's her choice. But even that knucklehead, she shut up and dribbled. Yeah, but she called a doctor in to elucidate a subject. Big C Sports been doing that a long time. So now, I don't care what anybody says. The validation comes. We've been talking about Surgeon General Jerome Adams on the sports show. What can he do to help athletes and their people they love in all communities, particularly what POTUS said, they want to find out why more African Americans are being hit harder. Well, he knows. They're already in court trying to overturn Obamacare. President Trump knows that. When you don't have access to health care, good health care, then your problems are compounded. So no matter how many times he stands at the lectern and say, well, I don't know, we got to look into that. People can't get what he has, which is good health care. And the people that can get it, because they cannot be denied with the pre-existing condition, if you try to strip that out of their opportunities to go out and see a doctor and get medicine and get proper health insurance, then you're part of that problem. The president knows that. He can hide behind it all he wants to. Just Google it. If the POTUS and the Trump administration are in court right now trying to overturn Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, it's not right when people are losing their lives because they can't get the proper medical treatment. It's just important. It really is important. We've all been impacted by COVID-19. Now more than ever, we got to unify and stay strong. Commissioner Roger Goodell, again, for you knuckleheads that said Big C Sports talk too much politics, tell that to Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, the wealthiest sports league in the United States of America. Roger Goodell. Think about that. Big C Sports been doing this 5 years. It means we're on the right side of things. Either lead, follow, or get out of the way. I'm talking to sponsors also that write checks and pay millions of dollars to organizations that are copycatting what we've been doing for 5 years now, Big C. Why are they changing their tune? Because it's real. And they're dealing with real talk. And I appreciate that. To me, I think that's so important. And the more we do that, I think the more we'll actually help a lot of people, because not everybody's going to read. Not everybody's going to stay informed. But what they will do is they'll watch a sports team. And when they watch a sports team, they'll see their heroes and their superstars saying things that will help them stay alive. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, we're going to talk more about COVID-19 how you can stay safe. And can you believe sports teams are talking politics too? We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I love called Google or Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Also launching a real estate show, TV listing show in the spring of 2020. I know we got to wait for the governors to say it's okay for people to interact and congregate. So even with that being on pause, maybe by an act of God or an act of science or whatever it is, we still want to let people know we will be doing that as soon as we can all open up the country and get back to work. Really appreciate that. So again, I just want to say this. I want to preface what I'm going to say on this part of the second half of the Big C Sports Show. When people were saying over the years, quit talking so much politics on your show. Now the NFL, National Football League, the #1 sports league in the universe, is doing what Big C Sports has been doing. Why does that matter? Because for sponsors that pay money for people who do what I do, don't you want to get the real McCoy? Don't you want to get the guys that get there first? Or you want the guy that's coming across the finish line last? When you run a race, they usually give out 3 medals. They give out gold, they give out silver, and they give out bronze. Big C Sports has the gold medal in bringing you this information. It's so important, and if it helps anyone that I love stay healthier, then it's worth it to me. I've never tried to appease knuckleheads. I'm just not that person. I've been a knucklehead in times too. But people who love me told me, boy, you better read. You better read, and you better know what's going on. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you. Read it. It's in the book. And that stuck with me since I was a little boy. And I want to make sure I do my show that way also. So I just really appreciate what the NFL has done. I know as part of the NFL draft taking place April 23rd through 25th, they're working on a broad plan to incorporate philanthropy and fundraising to provide additional help for those significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Doesn't that sound like what Big C Sports has been saying for 5 years now? And I'm proud of that, because no knucklehead can ever say to me again, man, you talk too much politics, when the #1 sports league in the universe is doing the same thing, and a lot of the public figures that they've hired come on board to do what they're doing in the world of broadcast. So I appreciate that, because we've been doing it for a long time. And as much as we talk about things and they tend to come true, Big C, there are times when we do have to pat ourselves on the back. I mean, everybody has to. If not us, then who? Don't wait for people to. I mean, I want to say this too to my broadcast brethren. I know since the Emancipation Proclamation, we were promised 40 acres and a mule, and it was taken away. I know when you go onto your platform, you got somebody telling you what to say. They got that thing in your ear for a reason. They put it in your ear so they can tell you how to think, how to talk, how to act, who to talk about, what to emphasize. We know that. That's part of that business. But you have a brain too. Just use both sides of it. Go in there and tell them what's important. I don't care about how many times we talk about sporting events and how much we want to get into sports. I love sports too. But if we have an issue that by opening our mouths that we can help people, then why would we not do it? That's important. They have, I was just mentioning, there's a, I believe, an island off the east coast of New York. And, I mean, it's sad to say, but there are times when they're just taking people and they're digging out mass graves off the coast of New York City. I think it's called, there's an island. I forgot the name of the island. I wish I could remember it, but people can Google it. And that's, to me, that has to be, I think it's called Hart Island. H-A-R-T, Hart Island. And that, to me, is very draconian. But they got to do something with the people that have passed on. And that breaks my heart. But putting my head in the sand is not going to help it. New York City is in the media capital of the United States of America. And a lot of our sports broadcast companies from around that same area, I'm saying this to our sponsors, a lot of those guys, you take that plug out of their ear, you take that teleprompter away, they don't know what to talk about. They're spending all their time as people are dying. Instead of trying to save lives, they're showing you replays. What does that mean about, what do they think about you? Could you imagine, think about this. Could you imagine if the house was on fire, or the floods came, and the winds blew, and you got some knuckleheads showing you replays on a TV screen, instead of telling people, like what happened on a lot of the programming lately, how to stay safe, how to get out of that burning house. Well, number one, shelter in place. We gotta find a way to get access to health care. We gotta eat healthier. We gotta drink more water instead of the things that are bad for us. People can Google what that stuff is. And a lot of stuff has been sold to the African American community where there's not a lot of grocery stores to get fresh food. A lot of meat is processed. So why is it hitting us harder if people have blood pressure and not taking the medication, or diabetes, not taking the medication? Whatever it is. That's what you're getting from Big C Sports. If you don't like it, change the channel and watch replays of somebody that played football 20 years ago or basketball. That's your choice too. But it's not going to keep your grandparents alive. We can blend both. We have a right and left hand, and a left side of the brain and a right side of the brain. Mayor Bill de Blasio in New York City talked about how the concerns with the mass burials, and it's necessary because of the high number of people that have passed on because of the pandemic. But you wouldn't know that watching some sports programs. They're showing you replays of whatever, the Masters event from whatever decade ago. I mean, that's their choice to do that. Nobody's going to tell them not to do it. I'm sure some people want to do that too, to get their head in the sand. I just say do some of both. It doesn't hurt you to do that. To me, that's my opinion. I really love that program that I saw last night with Magic Johnson on CNN with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. And then they had a pastor come on by the name of Warren Adams. They talked about humanity and how to help people. And not everybody gets the information. That's why I feel bad for our people who are just, sports-centric. They don't get the information because they're too busy watching replays. That's done to keep people drunk or asleep, but it's not going to help you stay alive. To me, I'm very proud of what the NFL has done. Also, Big C, you know how we talk about Big C Sports and being the number one sports show in the universe. Well, we're doing, for people that say, yeah, right. Well, the NFL copied our platform. Did they copy yours? No. NBA is going to do it too. So will Major League Baseball and NHL. You just mark my words. It's going to come. They're all going to start running PSAs coterminous with their sports programming because smart people can handle both. Think about this. CDC.gov, Big C Sports has been talking about the coronavirus and asking for the sports universe to step up and help a lot of people. Not only this, but social justice, other things that matter too. A lot of the athletes that play these games are African American. So Fox Sports, they are doing a PSA on COVID-19. This is for you dumb guys that say, I don't want to hear any more politics. You ever heard of Fox Sports? You ever hear of them? They cover sports. But they're also capitulating. They're starting to do the right thing. What took them so long? Big C Sports been doing it for 5 years. You have people like Christina Pink, Gus Johnson, who I think is a great broadcaster, Clarissa Thompson, Howie Long, Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Tony Gonzalez, Urban Meyer, and many others. They're telling people to go on to CDC.gov because as an African-American man, when we talk about why is it hitting our community so hard, and there have been so many myths that African-Americans can't get it, that's dumb to say that. But a lot of people have said that, and when people don't watch the news other than see how many points LeBron James scored, or did someone score a touchdown, is Cam Newton going to get signed by somebody? Is Teddy Bridgewater going to get signed? Is Tom Brady going to sign with another team? If that's your source of information, you can't take back information to help save your loved ones. But we want to do that with our program. It doesn't mean that we're any better than anybody else, but it does mean that we're on the right side of history. And as I always tell Big C, whatever we say, people can Google it. We've been saying that for 5 years. You can fact check it. And now that we've been saying that, the major sports teams and major sports networks, they're doing the same thing. We can still do our scores, but anyone who hasn't seen Revolt with Sean Puffy Combs, P. Diddy, and Van Jones, and Kamala Harris even spoke. I mean, there's a lot of people that are trying to find a solution. It's not about blaming somebody. You know, it doesn't matter if you have $100 million in the bank. It doesn't matter if you have $1 billion. If you get the coronavirus, you got to know how to get through it. Because not everybody is passing away from it. There are a lot of people who are recovering. And it's affecting people the most that already have a poor health condition. But even some of them can live through it if we just do the shelter in place and stay clean, stay in a clean environment. Don't have a lot of people coming in contact with you. Social distancing. How do I know that? Because I've been reading about it. So anyway, I wanted to make sure I did that because it's important to me. I love talking about things like that. And part of what I want to do with my help and maybe being a solution to this pandemic that's going on, there is a document called Senate Document 264, and it talks about healing the body with nutrition. That's so important for every sports athlete and everybody who wants to stay healthy. You can't eat a lot of junk food and think you're going to be healthy. I remember the late Zig Ziglar talked about someone who had $1 million horse. You wouldn't give it cigarettes. You wouldn't let it drink booze and party all night and eat junk food, deep fried everything, and expect it to be healthy. Well, how about $1 billion body? I remember the late Zig Ziglar talked about that. And people can Google this. It's Senate Document 264, written by the 74th Congress, second edition of second session. And think about this. This is what it says. That fruits and vegetables and grains are starving us no matter how much we eat, because do you know that most of us today are suffering from certain dangerous diet deficiencies which cannot be remedied until the depleted soils from which our foods come from are brought into proper mineral balance. Even farmers, they always till the field. They'll plant different produce because they don't want the ground to saturate all the nutrients or the fruits that they grow and the vegetables to saturate all the nutrients from the ground. That's important. We got to know that. When we say, well, why is it hitting African Americans so hard? We just told you there's not a lot of grocery stores where you can go and get fresh food and fruits and vegetables. And a lot of times people eat junk food and things that come out of a can because it's cheaper. But we can have nuts and we can have broccoli's healthy for us. We got to have collard greens, garlic, onions, tomatoes. Those things are very healthy. Not a lot of processed foods are healthy. People got to know that. We got to choose to eat better. That's so important because sometimes the food that's mass produced doesn't have the things that we need. So everybody has to just do their part. I would just say Google Senate Document 264 and realize it, because if we're not healthy, then we can't fight off disease. And that's part of it in the document too. So we got to know that, at least part of that. 99% of American people are deficient in these minerals and upset any of the balance that we are stricken with. It can shorten our lives if we don't have the healthier foods in our system. We all got to know that. If we can all do that, then we all keep ourselves healthier. I want to make sure I do that. I know you want to know who won the game, but that's important. So that's Big C Sports doing our part on what it's going to take to keep us all safe. That's so important to me. I remember growing up, we had some live vegetables, had some livestock, and a lot of that stuff coming out of the ground, the foods that we ate to be healthy. So hopefully that PSA can help somebody too. I want to just mention, as we talk about sports, I know for you guys that can't stand anything about knowledge that's going to help your family, I also even though it might be to the dismay of a lot of people, the UFC 249 at Tachi Palace in Lemoore, California, in the Central Valley. I think it's about an hour south of Fresno. That event's been called off by the network executives at ESPN, and I'm just opining that they did it because of science and health. The UFC's ambitious attempt to pull off the UFC 249 in the midst of the global coronavirus pandemic has come up short, despite only releasing the details of the event Thursday, which was reported to happen at Tachi Palace Casino and Resort in California on April 18th. After weeks of insisting that the event would go forward, the event has officially been canceled by all UFC events or postponed indefinitely. Why is that? Probably because they've been reading science. That's important. If they can do it, why can't we? I think that's important that they called it off. I know there's a lot of people that say, oh, I can't believe they're calling it off. What are we going to watch? How are we going to get through? Well, sometimes health is more important than money. Big C, you and I talked about that too. And what's going to be more important than money? Well, health is. And you have the NFL behind that, Major League Baseball behind that, NBA basketball behind it. We even have NASCAR behind it. We have the Olympics behind it. They're all behind it. They're all pulling their head out of the sand. And let's let science tell us how we stay healthy. For every sports person, I know Dana White's been saying, hey, I'll find an island. I'll find somebody else. I mean, the man can do what he wants to do. Not everybody reads. Not everybody reads. If he wants to get into the octagon, he can stage an octagon event with himself. And somebody else that wants to get out there and do it, you don't have to televise it. If you want to see somebody beaten up so bad, you can do that in your own backyard. I mean, what's a guy by the name of Kimbo Slice? He used to knock people out in backyard fights all the time. That was not sanctioned either. But if they're so eager and so hungry to see the UFC guys go in there and share pathogens and saliva and spit and blood, they can stage a fight in their own backyard. Dana White can fight somebody in his own backyard. He can put it on videotape if he really wants to see the action that bad, but he won't put his body on the line for it. He'll do yours if you're a fighter. Why? Because of the money. He can do what Kimbo Slice did. If he's that urgent to go see somebody bleed, he can set up fights and put it on videotape and put it on YouTube. I'm sure a lot of people will do that. So part of this happened, and think about where they were going to do it. Tachi Palace, it has multiple outlets and locations. Tachi Palace is a casino on Native American tribal land. What happened to the Native Americans? They were sent out to their own isolated places. Think about that. On tribal land, they were going to do this. So people don't live on tribal land. They don't have people in the community that may take whatever they find out there by large gatherings and take it back home. Native Americans, I think when Amherst sent smallpox in blankets up to Native Americans to wipe out a population, people will still want to use Native Americans to schedule a fight at Tachi Palace. How about this? Dana White. POTUS is saying it was a hoax. How about stage a fight in the White House, in the Rose Garden? Why you got to go to an Indian tribal land, Native American tribal land, to have some guys fight when the government's saying, because of science, it's not safe to do it? Government regulations on large public gatherings, even though they're saying there would be no crowd in attendance, well, many continue to express concerns over the safety of all involved. Well, there would be some people that came in contact with it. That place doesn't turn on its own electricity. It has people that bring in whatever supplies they need, lighting and doing the rink together, and just, it's not necessary. There would be people trying to get around it some way or another. But why do it while we haven't gotten on top of this yet? So I propose, you really want to see ratings go through the roof? You want to see the highest ratings in the UFC universe? How about Dana White stays the UFC 249 in the Rose Garden at the White House and have Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence sit there and watch it? Since they're so in a hurry to open up the economy again, and science is saying we want to hold on until we know that we're safe. You don't tell me that would sell the highest ratings? Well, go and find out. All you got to do is ask. I'm sure he'd say yes to you. But everybody has to do their own part. I say trust science. Tachi Palace is a Native American reservation, a casino in California. So everybody has their thoughts. A little bit of thought on NFL football. The LA Rams. Can you believe they trade Brandon Cooks to the Houston Texans? He's nowhere near as good as Hopkins, who's now played down in Arizona. But you got to do what they can in the NFL to make your teams better. I know they want to do that. And everybody has their own thoughts on why, and how they're going to do that. Think about this, a sport that I love. In the world of the coronavirus pandemic right now, college football, spring football programs, they're trying to figure out the future. Will it be teams that can compete for a national championship? If this is lifted, hopefully so. We know we have programs like Ohio State. Spring football was shelved because of the coronavirus. Just like this UFC 249, they trusted science. If it were all about money, these programs would still be in spring practice, from Ohio State to Clemson, LSU, USC, Alabama. All of them would still be doing that. But the pandemic is casting some uncertainty on the 2020 seasons. And programs are starting to figure out how they're going to do it, how they're going to get ready for some kind of season. Is it even safe to do so? They're trying to manage for what many would be a substantial financial blow if the season is shortened or canceled. Well, for the athletes playing in that game, what's more of a blow? If you contract that virus because you're going against the COVID-19 guidelines, coronavirus.gov, and you take it home to your loved ones, and someone gets sick of that like it's happening around the country, what's more tragic, that happening or you not being able to play a football game? I can't believe I can't play football. What am I going to do now? I don't understand what I'm going to do. And that's how some of the athletic directors are acting. It's not the football players. It's the administration, it's the scientists that have said, let's shut it down until we get on top of this. We got to stay healthy. Something that I think might be a solution for people that are sports star. You have this virtual IndyCar racing where they have real stars. It's actually grabbed some of the attention of sponsors who are paying for these race car teams to do it. Some 1 million people have tuned in to watch some professional racers play a video game on national TV. I remember there are times going to the movies with my son and being able to see, or taking my daughter at times, and they have these arcades where you could sit down and play these NASCAR games. So everybody wants to do that, and they're thinking if they do that now, maybe it's a way to get people to pay attention to sports. Think about it. They've been pushing iCar, this iRacing series. It's already had tremendous infrastructure from an existing league of some gamers, and I think there's some teams run by Joe Gibbs. Remember, he was former coach of the Washington Redskins, also Team Penske. There's a lot of people out there. All NASCAR had to do was grab its product and then swap the amateur racers with its stars. And I think Fox Sports, who also did the PSA on COVID-19, they said that they would broadcast the races. So Fox Sports is at least being prescient enough to give out PSAs and try to do something that brings entertainment to people that want to see it. And I'm one of those guys. I grew up watching Big Daddy Don Garlett, AJ Foyt, Richard Petty. I grew up watching those guys. It's nice to see drag racing and sports racing and NASCAR racing, whatever it is. People can do that and find a way to get some entertainment. I know that's important, and hopefully that's just another avenue that people are using. I know baseball has its own challenges too, and they're trying to figure out if they should put people in a bubble and let them play. And then also some news in Major League Baseball. Slugger Mark Reynolds says he's going to retire after a 13-year run. He's batting at, 298. I think he hit 298 over 13 seasons with 8 different teams. 36 years old. Remember that he's 6 years younger than some NFL quarterbacks that are going into another season, still trying to do his thing and deciding to step down. He was a prime example of the rise of all-or-nothing baseball players. His best years came with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He batted 260 in 2009. He set a career high with 44 homers and still a big league record, 223 strikeouts. But Big C, they can't say he wasn't swinging the bat. You strike out 233 times, Big C, or actually 223 times. I don't want to cheat him. That means you're swinging the bat. 4 years with the Diamondbacks. He played among different teams, Baltimore Orioles, Cleveland Indians, the New York Yankees, Milwaukee Brewers, and the St. Louis Cardinals. So he did his thing in baseball. I wish him nothing but the best, and I wish him to have more success once he steps aside from the game. And everybody has to figure that out at some point in time. We all have to. We all got to do whatever it takes to stay safe. I know sports is a panacea for a lot of us. We use it as a way to get away from whatever's bothering us. But I just want to make sure that we do our part, and I'm very pleased that the NFL and also Fox Sports, they have a lot of their analysts doing the PSAs. Big C and I have been doing PSAs for 5 years now on different various subjects, especially when it came to Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. But you look at the criminal justice system, it's ravaged the African-American community. I think worldwide, over 25% of all incarcerations are in the United States. Over half African-Americans. We only make up 13% of the population. That's important. That's more important to me than who won a game. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on an app that I love called Google or Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show, I will introduce Big C as the Mystic from 3,000 miles away, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Launching a real estate show, listing show in the spring of 2020. I know we need permission for the governors to say that people can gather in large gatherings again, but there's still things to do. I mean, life will get back to some resemblance. It won't be normal, but just like anything else in life, we got to breathe, we got to pause, we got to get educated, we got to understand medical science. When I hear that people are saying that this affects African Americans more than any other group of people, I would not come onto a program and not talk about a solution. I reach out to science, and I think I gave some great examples. Surgeon General Jerome Adams talking about go to COVID19.gov or coronavirus.gov to learn about COVID-19. I talked about that program that I think a lot of people, maybe if they didn't see it, they would have been great to see it. It was on CNN News. They had a pastor by the name of Warren Adams, talked about faith coming up on Easter. Magic Johnson talked about how he overcame having dealt with illness in the past, and his message for African Americans also, and all people. They were not just talking about how to dribble a basketball. It's about eating healthy, getting our exercise, being informed, get some knowledge. Don't just cry that we don't have a game to see. The games will come back, but they don't come back unless we're healthy. I think that's important. I really appreciate Jerome Adams, Surgeon General, doing his thing. And I know that if we just keep our heads full of information, we can still play sports. We can still go out and walk in the park. You know, they're saying, I believe in California now, you got to wear a mask when you go out shopping in LA. I believe I heard that on the news program. I'll make sure you can Google that for yourself. You don't got to take my words for it. When you're out at the grocery store, I do wear a mask too. It's one of the times that we got to do that. I was talking to a friend of mine from St. Louis, Missouri this morning, and we were talking about some people that he knows that have been affected by COVID-19, and, you know, thoughts and prayers are with them. Sometimes it's underlying health factors that takes a lot of people out. So we got to do the best we can to keep people that we love safe. And watching replays of football, basketball, and baseball is not one of them that coronavirus.gov talks about. I know that might be a way to get some relief, and people need that, and there's nothing wrong with that too. But if we have the chance to give any type of light, shed any type of light on a solution, I appreciate having people telling us how to do that. I heard Jerome Adams, Surgeon General, he addressed a reporter today about maybe some things that he said that may have been insensitive to some people. I mean, how we call our grandparents, whatever we call them, you know, Big Ma or you know, whatever it is, nanas and mamas and all that. I know my kids call my mother, call her Nana. They don't call her grandma, they call her Nana. That's what she wants. But some people try to find the little things and make it an issue. It's not an issue. So he said he apologized if that offended anybody. But our community has been hit pretty hard, and we got to make sure we get this message out there. Got to get some minerals in our body. Got to eat healthy, exercise, practice social distancing. This is not time to go to the clubs or have people coming over for, you know, a big dinner. You got to protect people. We got to. That's what science says. You want to watch the game? Nothing wrong with that. But let's watch the game with two eyes open and not one eye open and the other closed. I think that's so important. I want to wish everybody a very happy Easter. I know it's going to be an Easter like the Passover. People are going to stay in the house. Not going to be large gatherings. For people who read, for people who pay attention to science, and that might be painful, but if we can get through it, I think we're all better for it. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe? I know your message. Stay healthy, wealthy, and wise. Stay prayed up. Make sure you check on your family members. Make sure they're doing fine. Make sure we're washing our hands. Get as much exercise as you can. You know, go walking. You know, do what you got to do to keep your mind healthy. You know, eat healthy. Go on to coronavirus.gov. As we're sitting down and giving thanks, I'm still asking for that 1 million pastors all over the world to pray for God's providence, that we can find a way to cure this coronavirus pandemic. That's important to me. And I wish everybody a very happy Friday and a very happy Easter. Every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m., follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.